Hello everybody, today I'll be doing a video focusing on trends I want the beauty community to leave behind in 2019. I got this idea from Julia Mazzucato here on YouTube. I love her channel and I watch it constantly. She did a video pretty much the exact same concept as this, but I'm putting my own spin on it and I'm giving you guys my opinions and my reasonings, of course. So these are just things that I think that the community has been doing a lot of, or some not as much, but nevertheless these are trends or just things that I think that we could do without in 2020. So the first thing that I think the beauty community should be leaving behind in 2019 is not disclosing sponsored posts. This is something that has been so prevalent on both Instagram and YouTube actually, and it's troublesome to say the least, because when you're not disclosing sponsorships, you're losing the trust of your audience, you're losing integrity, and at the same time you are making it even more difficult for everybody else who's participating in this beauty industry, because what ends up happening is that when you're not disclosing, you are making other people who do disclose look bad. I think it's very troubling that not disclosing has been an issue in 2019 with all the attention that we have been giving to the issue of not disclosing sponsorships, but that's the reality of it. There are still people who don't disclose. There are still people who just I would say like subtly sometimes, but also sometimes not so much, post a video or a post and it's so like clearly manufactured in an inorganic way, or some brand or product is basically emphasized so strongly and it's not disclosed, and it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I really don't like seeing that, and I really do hope that we can leave it behind in 2019. The second thing that I want to leave behind in 2019 would be large makeup palettes. And yes, this is a little bit of a tiny pet peeve of mine, but I have mentioned to you guys before how I have like an IKEA Alex, and in it I store all my makeup, of course, and I have like a large drawer dedicated to big eyeshadow palettes, and the fact that it's almost completely full is indicative of just how many large palettes that I have, many of which there are like large, or rather sometimes not so much, sections of the palette that I just do not touch. And that is all because I got that palette with the intention of using most of it, but I ended up using only like a small portion of it and just letting the rest go to waste almost. It's like with my Morphe 39A, I'll put a picture of it over here so you can see what it looks like. Most of it is pretty colorful, but there is a huge part of it that is very neutral. I don't use the neutral part whatsoever, but I do find myself using the colorful part every now and then. And that's just like one example of countless iterations of a large makeup palette. And what happens with those large makeup palettes is that they're difficult to store. The color story ends up looking pretty similar. It depends on what palettes you're like looking at, but the color story ends up looking very similar. It ends up being less inspiring in my opinion than having like a smaller curated color scheme. And often you do end up not using a really significant portion of that palette at some point or another. Depends on the palette, depends on the color story, and of course depends on your own makeup style. But my point is, I really do hope that brands will concentrate more on releasing smaller, more curated color schemes, because I think that that is more inspiring, that is better for the brand cost-wise. And I don't know, it's just like, I think that I have gained so much more like inspiration from seeing smaller, more curated color schemes than the big ones that we've been seeing constantly. Like I don't like big color schemes. I don't like big color stories. I just think that it gets so mundane and boring, and I want to see something different. Preferably like in the form of smaller, more edited color schemes, color stories in palettes. And another thing that I want to leave behind in 2019 would be the tendency of us as a beauty community to focus on the white noise rather than spotlight real issues that we need to be talking about. I would like to use drama as an example. Obviously, drama channels are like making their own little niche on YouTube, and that is fantastic. They're making their own industry. That is great. But I do think that the influencers that perpetuate the drama and the multiple industries that support it really need to maybe take a look at what's happening and try and reframe what they're doing to actually benefit and help the greater good. It really does not matter who's friends with who's having beef with who had something to say about this person, who said that. It really doesn't matter. That is irrelevant information when it comes to the bigger picture. Yes, it's entertaining to hear about, but does it have any substance? No. What does matter is if you have like a really big issue, such as somebody using their platform to insult others in a derogatory way, somebody using their platform to spread racism, and greater still, how harmful the industry can be on a global scale. We briefly spoke about mica this year when Jaclyn Hill came out with her highlighters, but before then it hasn't really been talked about that much. Since then, it has not really been talked about that much whatsoever, and Jaclyn Hill is not the only makeup person to be using mica in product. And I would highly recommend looking up the harmful side effects of mining natural mica, which is an ingredient present in most makeup products these days. A vast amount of the people who actually mine this mica that is used in so many makeup products around the world would be children who are put in terribly unsafe conditions, who are working at this job because they have nothing else to, like, no other way to provide for their family, and who die or become incredibly injured as a result of mining mica. And yet, we have so much opportunity in this industry to talk about this issue, to demand that companies implement the utilization of synthetic mica, which actually has more benefits than natural mica. It's stronger as an ingredient without the harmful side effects. But we're not doing that. We're not telling brands to do that. Or at the very least, we're not doing so on a scale that actually is making any sort of difference. This is a real big issue that only a handful of people are actually speaking on, when in reality, we could actually redirect all the time and energy and just clicks we devote to petty drama and talk about actual issues. In reality, the responsibility, in my opinion, lies on the larger influencers who are not using their platform, in my opinion, as efficiently as they could. But the next thing that I think we should be leaving behind in 2019 would be competition to get on PR lists. I kind of think that like it's really unfortunate watching like larger brands, and I'll bring up like just an example, like Anastasia Beverly Hills and Norvina, for instance, how there was like this like just wild PR search, and so many smaller influencers were submitting in their photos. They were asking to be on the PR list, and the scale to which this was done was in large part facilitated by the brands involved. And it's kind of like, I mean, it's really unfortunate because in my mind, having or rather facilitating these giant PR searches or just facilitating this like mania to get free product, it kind of takes away from the artistry, from the creativity, from the ingenuity of makeup, and it makes us all a little bit more desperate than we need to be. You know what I mean? And yes, of course, like these PR searches have been done to promote the brands involved. I think that's pretty obvious if you look at it like objectively. But at the same time, I do think that it would be nice to see a little bit of genuine creativity, passion, art in the makeup world, in the makeup community in 2020, instead of really just being so focused on growth, so focused on just recognizability and followers and likes and all of that. I mean, I'm glad that Instagram took away the likes, because I found myself so obsessed by how many likes I was getting that I found myself compromising my creativity. And similar to that would be the PR searches, because PR searches, like, you start to value your own creativity and your own talent at makeup based on the outcome of these sorts of like endeavors, if you will. So yeah, I would like to leave that behind in 2019, because I really feel like in today's world, we need something that's a little bit more genuine. We need to use makeup and use the creativity that it entails as a form of escapism almost, because that's what we really need. We need something that's happy. We need something that's wonderful. We need something that's art, because the world is sad, and I think the beauty industry doesn't necessarily have to be like as harsh and competitive as it has been for the past year and longer. The next thing that we should be leaving behind in 2019 would be lack of inclusivity in shade ranges. I cannot believe I'm still talking about this, but apparently it's still happening, because I see it every single time. Well, not every single time. I see it so many times whenever I look at new makeup releases. It just seems that so many brands are still not being inclusive, and I'm specifically talking about like the luxury brands who seem to lack the ability to have a good shade range, because higher end brands, I think, and even drugstore brands have been getting better at it. But I think that a big issue lies with luxury brands who somehow believe that it is acceptable to come out with very limited shade ranges, because apparently that's their brand. I have no idea. I don't know what their explanation for it is, but I really do think that this lack of inclusivity should have been left behind a long time ago, and I speak about it a lot, but might as well include it in this video, because it is definitely something that we need to leave behind in 2019 as we move forward in 2020. There are people out there who cannot find bronzers that correspond to their skin tone. It's an issue that we really, really do need to fix. Another thing that we need to be leaving behind in 2019 would be the implementation and the use of mink lashes. I'm talking about real mink, I'm not talking about faux mink. Mink farming in general is so disgusting. It's a completely like pointless practice in my opinion. It's very dated, especially with regards to the makeup industry. I see no reason to be using an animal for your false lashes. My family is from Eastern Europe, so I get the need to use fur as a heating agent in the winter, because that's what my ancestors have been doing for generations. Doesn't mean I like it, but I still see like the correlation between the fur industry and the need to like actually be warm in really, really cold climates. But I do think that the idea of using fur as a fashion item or even as like a beauty item is absolutely ludicrous, and it's pointless. It's pointless cruelty, it's ridiculous, and I'm so glad that we are seeing more brands move towards synthetic fake mink lashes. But at the same time, we still have a few real mink, real fur lashes out there, and I see no point in taking them with us into 2020. They should be left behind in 2019, point blank, period. Another thing that I think that we need to leave behind in 2019 is the illusion that large beauty influencers should not be held accountable for their actions. In a way, stan culture is kind of related to this. Stan culture is also something that I think we should be leaving in 2019, because it gives us an excuse to give excuses for people who should know better. Because guess what? If you have millions of dollars, if you have millions of fans, and if you have a constantly growing bank account, you should also have some brain cells left in your brain to know the difference from right and wrong, to know the difference between being accountable and being a terrible person. That's just my opinion. There are so many examples of people, of influencers, big and small, who don't recognize the responsibility that they have to their fans, to their followers, and to the rest of the community. People cannot behave like adults. And I'm talking about Dramageddon. I'm talking about the Jaclyn Hill lipstick launch, because I feel like I'm always thinking about that, even though it happened ages ago. All of these things and more are examples of larger influencers making mistakes, and in so many cases repeating their actions, and being able to do so because their fans, or rather their stans, are not holding them accountable to their actions, or rather they blur everybody else out, everybody else who has a critique for them, because they consider them haters if they don't agree with everything they say and if they don't support everything that they do, even though sometimes it can be really stupid, if I do say so myself. But yes, that is all I have to say for this video. This is going to be a long video to edit, but I hope that it was enjoyable for you. If you haven't already seen my video in which I talked about 7 beauty trends I want to leave behind in 2019, I'll put that in the cards. If I forget, it'll be on my channel. But with that being said, thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.